In the vast, sun-drenched landscape of the American imagination, one figure stands taller than the rest, casting a shadow that stretches from the silent era to the modern day. John Wayne was more than a movie star. He was a living, breathing monument to a set of ideals that many believe have been lost to the winds of time. To his millions of fans, he wasn't just the Duke, he was America itself, rugged, unyielding, and fiercely loyal to the flag. But as we continue our journey in Beyond the Legend, we must ask, what happens when the man and the myth become indistinguishable? What is the true weight of becoming a national symbol? Today, we are pulling back the curtain on the most complex chapter of John Wayne's life, his unwavering, often controversial patriotism, and the silent, heavy price he paid for wearing the mantle of the American hero. This is a story of a man caught between the bright lights of Hollywood and the dark clouds of a nation in turmoil. We are looking at the heart of a patriot, the scars of a survivor, and the legacy of a man who became a legend at the cost of his own identity. Behind the cinematic gunfire and the iconic walk, there was a man struggling to live up to the very hero he created on the silver screen. To understand John Wayne's deep-seated devotion to his country, one must understand the era that forged him. He grew up in a world where the American frontier was still a living memory, a place where character was built through hardship and grit. As he rose to fame during the Great Depression, he became a beacon of hope for a nation that had lost its way. People didn't just go to the cinema to see a film. They went to see the Duke, remind them of who they were supposed to be. However, this image of the invincible soldier and the fearless lawman came with a shadow that haunted him for decades: World War II. While many of his contemporaries, like Jimmy Stewart and Henry Fonda, donned the uniform and headed to the front lines, Wayne remained in Hollywood. It is a little-known truth that this became his greatest internal struggle, a wound that never truly healed. He was the biggest star in the world, playing the hero on screen while the real battle raged across the oceans. His absence from the military was not due to a lack of courage, but a complex web of studio contracts, family obligations, and his age at the time. Yet, the guilt of not serving in uniform stayed with him, fueling a lifelong desire to prove his loyalty in other ways. He felt he had a debt to pay to the men who fought the real wars while he fought the cinematic ones, and this debt would shape every political and social move he made for the rest of his life. This burning need to serve his country eventually transformed him into a political powerhouse, a role that made him as many enemies as it did friends. John Wayne didn't just play the hero. He believed in the mission with every fiber of his being. During the height of the Cold War and the Red Scare, he became the loudest voice for American traditionalism in an industry that was rapidly changing. He wasn't afraid to stand alone against the changing tides of the 1960s and 70s. While the world around him was shifting toward counterculture, rebellion, and the rejection of old values, the Duke stood like an ancient oak, rooted in the values of the Old West. He became the face and the voice of the silent majority. But being the guardian of tradition in a changing world meant facing a relentless barrage of criticism. He was called outdated, a relic of a bygone era, and sometimes even a villain by the younger generation. But Wayne never flinched. He believed that a man's word and his loyalty to his land were the only things that truly mattered. He used his fame as a shield for the values he held dear, often funding political movements and supporting veterans' causes out of his own pocket. He was even known to have consulted with the FBI and high-ranking officials, believing that his influence could help protect the American way of life from internal and external threats. One of the most profound and controversial ways this patriotism manifested was in his absolute, unwavering devotion to the American soldier. To the men in the foxholes, the trenches, and the remote outposts, John Wayne was more than a celebrity. He was their champion, their brother in arms and spirit. During the Vietnam War, when the conflict was tearing the heart of America apart, Wayne did something few others dared to do. He traveled to the front lines, not for a safe photo op in a secure zone, but to look the young men in the eyes in the middle of a war zone and tell them their sacrifice mattered. He ignored the warnings of his advisors and the direct threats from radical political groups, venturing into dangerous territory because he believed the boys needed to see that the Duke was standing with them. This was the era of the Green Berets, a film Wayne produced and directed out of a pure sense of duty. He wanted to show a side of the conflict that he felt the mainstream media was intentionally ignoring. The film was savaged by critics who called it propaganda, but for the soldiers serving in Southeast Asia, it was a moment of profound recognition. Wayne saw himself in those young men, the sons of the frontier, fighting far from home. He spent hours, often late into the night, writing personal letters to the families of fallen soldiers. In those quiet, private moments, he wasn't a movie star. He was a grieving father and a fellow citizen, sharing the heavy burden of a nation's loss. His connection to the military was the bridge that filled the gap of his own missing service, a bridge built on a lifetime of genuine respect and shared sacrifice. But what was the true cost of being the eternal hero? To be John Wayne meant that Marion Morrison, the man who loved chess, bridge, and classical poetry, had to disappear. He could never truly be off duty. Whether he was at a restaurant, on his beloved boat, the Wild Goose, or even in the private sanctuary of his own home, he was expected to be the Duke. He was a man with a sophisticated understanding of world history and a deep love for the sea, yet the world only wanted the man with the gun and the rugged swagger. This constant, unrelenting pressure to uphold a legend took a significant toll on his personal life and his physical health. He battled through grueling surgeries and life-threatening illnesses with the same stoicism he showed on the screen, because he believed that John Wayne didn't have the right to complain. He became a prisoner of his own creation, a living monument that could never show a single crack. Even as the film industry moved toward anti-heroes, moral ambiguity, and gritty realism, Wayne refused to compromise the moral clarity of his characters. He once famously said that he played the man the audience wanted their sons to be. This was his burden, to be the moral compass for millions of people, even when he himself was feeling lost in the swirling fog of fame and aging. He chose the legend over the man, firmly believing that the world needed the symbol of the hero more than it needed the reality of his own human struggles. In his final years, as the sun began to set on his long, storied, and often turbulent career, Wayne's patriotism remained his North Star, guiding him through his darkest hours. He knew his time was short, yet he used his remaining strength to advocate for the things he loved: the preservation of the American landscape, the dignity of the American spirit, and the honor of the veterans. He became a mentor to a new generation of actors, teaching them that fame was not just a prize, but a tool to be used for something far greater than oneself. When he made his final, unexpected appearance at the Academy Awards in 1979, the entire room stood in a thunderous, emotional ovation that lasted for minutes. It wasn't just for his acting. It was for the incredible endurance of a man who had stood his ground for 50 years through shifting cultural winds and personal battles. He looked out at the audience, his face etched with the deep lines of 1,000 cinematic and real-life battles, and gave that famous, crooked smile one last time. He had survived the critics, the cancer, the political firestorms, and the changing times. He had become the very soil of America itself. John Wayne passed away shortly after, but the legend he built didn't die with him. It lives on in every dusty trail, every waving flag, and every heart that believes in the simple, rugged truth of the American dream. He was a man who gave his life to a myth, and in doing so, he became truly immortal. As we close this chapter of Beyond the Legend, we see that John Wayne's patriotism was not a simple or one-dimensional thing. It was a complex, beautiful, and sometimes painful journey of a man trying to live up to the hero he saw in the mirror. He taught us that being a hero isn't about never being afraid or never making mistakes. It's about standing for something larger than yourself, no matter the cost or the criticism. He was the Duke, the patriot, and the icon. But above all, he was a man who loved his country with a passion that defined an entire era of history. Thank you for walking this path with us and exploring the man behind the shadow. Join us in our next episode as we continue to uncover the hidden depths of the men and women who shaped our history. Until then, keep the spirit of the frontier alive in your own heart, and always remember the Duke's own words: courage is being scared to death, but saddling up anyway.